And the demo I'm going to show you now is originating from the set level research project on credible simulation, the credible simulation process. You've seen it on the slide earlier. And this is the origin of the demo I'm going to show you now. This is, of course, also valid for industry use cases. It's just been developed together with the research team. And this is process centered and oriented. So let's dive into this. I'm going to open the simulation use case that we have been working on in this research project. And you can see we have different views to look at our project. One thing that is new is the entity page where we have all of the information about an entity on one page instead of on the rather small detail view. But for now, it's the same content. We are working on improving this a bit more. And we have the project dashboard. In the project dashboard, we can see all of the tasks that are somehow related to me, together with the role I am carrying, my configuration items, all of the items that are currently in work or in review, as well as a journal, what happened in the last couple of weeks, which phases have been put to which release date, and what were the messages in there. And we also have this Gantt chart, which we can slightly configure, and this can also show us a very simplified calculation of whether there is some delay. And we can see the credible simulation process is somewhat in delay. This is due to the execution phase being in delay. Here you can see how far we are. So let's look at the date-wise. So let's look at the details on the execution phase to find out why it is in delay. And if I look at it, I can see that it should have already started, though it is still in specification. This is true for the phase as well as the activities within this phase. So let's check out why this is still in specification. I can see that there are several configuration items assigned to my execute simulation activity. They are all assigned as inputs. I can scan through them and even open them to get a little more information about it. I can, of course, also, if there is an external artifact somewhere in there, which I totally forgot to look up which one I have to click on. I think it was this one. Yes, it was. There I can jump into the source system, and if I put in my credentials, which I omit for now because I don't think that this is rather interesting for you guys, I can look at it in the source system. But it's secure, so I have to log in order to look at it. I have to log in order to download it, but I can look it up and download it directly from OpenCLM. So it's saving me several clicks, and it's rather helpful there. Now that I've seen that for executing my simulation, basically everything is already in there, at least all of the inputs, I could, in theory, start it. However, in this scenario, it's not going to be me who's executing the simulation, but a subcontractor. So I want to give them a guideline on how they are supposed to execute the simulation. So I'm adding a guideline to this step, to this activity. And here you can see my search is already somewhat pre-configured, but I can also load searches. So we have several saved searches. I saved them earlier today. I can also delete them here. I can re-execute my latest search, but I'm going for the methods for now because I want to select a method. Now I can execute the search, and there I see there is a simulation guideline. Or there are simulation setups, and but I want to go with the simulation guideline. So I'm going to select this. I can look at the details of this one. I can even look at the artifacts in here, and I can decide that I want to have this precise version linked to my activity, or I want to have the latest version. So if there would be updates in the simulation guideline, they would be carried over to this activity. And I'm choosing exactly that, to use an imprecise link. I'm going to select the configuration item, and it should be here in my assignments as well. Now I also want to add a plant baseline. These plant baselines basically help me to document my assigned configuration items automatically depending on a trigger state of a trigger entity. So in this case, I want to have my simulation inputs documented. My trigger entity is the execute simulation activity, and the trigger state would be in work. That's it. This is not yet a baseline. It's just a template for a baseline that is supposed to be executed whenever the execute simulation activity goes to in work. This could be once when the workflow is ideal. So it's in specification, it goes into work, it is being reviewed and then published. But whenever the reviewer says, this is not fine, we need to continue working on it, it will go back to in work, and the input parameters will be will be frozen in a new baseline. So such a planned baseline may have several children baselines that actually automatically save the information whenever the trigger is being hit. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to put the execute simulation activity now into work. I could add a comment here. For now, I'm not going to do that because you're just going to see me produce typos. And now my execute simulation is in work. And if I look at my simulation inputs, you can see that there is actually a baseline, which includes 102 items. That sounds like a large number, but imagine we have all of our configuration items in there, which are 10-ish. All of the links between them, all of the versions of them, and all of the artifacts in them. So it's accumulating to become a bit bigger than it originally is. But if we look at it, you can see it's basically these 9 configuration items with their relations. And they are being frozen, and I cannot change them anymore. And I can, at a later point in time, take this baseline, get my simulation inputs basically back, and reproduce the exact same simulation for auditing purposes or for testing or whatever. So this is the case of resimulation. Earlier, you have already seen that we can reuse items like the simulation guideline. And now I would like to talk about the third thingy that is important for credible simulations, which is traceability. So in order to produce traceability also across system borders, I can export my project via STMD and SSP, which are evolving standards in the simulation domain that provide means of traceability. And then my subcontractor who's going to execute the simulation can use this SSP container that has all of the information that they require, as well as all of the files, which are automatically extracted from my source systems and packed into the SSP container so they can start working. And then they can send me an SSP container back, including the simulation results. And now let's assume that this happened quite a couple of times. And now I want to check whether there are simulations that didn't have quite some good results. So I'm going to go to the search and perform the advanced search. Again, I could load previous filters, but For you seeing the search, I'm going to not do this. Instead, I will enter stuff manually. Namely, I am looking for configuration items that are simulation results and results. And now I want to see what is out there. And I can see we have 11 results in here. Of course, this could be more. But this does not help me necessarily to see whether these results are okay or not. So I can perform a metadata search on the field simulation quality. Of course, this field has to be attached to my results. And then I say I want those that are satisfactory. I am confirming and hoping that I did not misspell, and I did not. Nice, because I get a result. One simulation result has the metadata that its simulation quality is unsatisfactory. That's, of course, a shame, and I don't want to have unsatisfactory simulation results, so I want to find out what happened here, which means I'm going to perform an impacting entities analysis. This analysis uses all of the input and output relations that are being modeled somewhere to identify impacts. So the hypothesis behind this would be that an input of an activity will have an effect and an impact on the output of the same activity. And with that, I can basically step by step go through the project. Here I can see that all of the inputs of the activity that has the simulation result as output. In the advanced setting, I can add a bit more information. I can, for example, go to the maximum depth, which is not that handy, to be honest. So I'm going to revoke that immediately and go step by step and level by level so that everyone can follow. Here we can see we have several rather cryptic configuration items, including our simulation guideline that is somewhere attached to it, but nothing that we can actually make sense of. So we are going deeper in, and we can also see it's getting a bit more complex even. We have some architecture elements here. We have more cryptic stuff. And we have some general requirements. So let's go even more deeper in here and remember the general requirements because that one looks promising. And here we can see this has one item that has an impact on it. So let's check into it. And here we can see that there is a description including a definition of speed in miles per hour, which is, as this was a German research project, somewhat confusing since we are using metric units. So this requirement or this definition is off, and we can find the reason why the simulation results were unsatisfactory. Good for me. I do know that this thing is called, I think, somewhat like that. So I'm going to search it to give you. So this should have opened in the detail view just now. And I want to perform a where used analysis to see where this requirement has been used, in which other projects it has been used, and whether it was only European projects or maybe also American projects where it is right or where it might be correctly assumed that miles per hour is at least at the beginning a valid requirement. This takes a while because it's not just searching the direct relations, but also trace links and any sorts of relations that CIs have amongst each other. So if this configuration item would have a trace link to another configuration item that belongs to a different project, the different project would be listed here as well. And you have seen we have quite some projects in this instance, so it took a bit. And here we can see it obviously originates from the simulation use case 1. as its owning project, but it has been used in other simulation projects. And now I can scan through them and identify who the manager is and inform them that they are using a requirement that is using miles per hour as a unit, and that they should probably check whether that's appropriate for their projects or not. And yeah, I think that would also already be the end of my demo.